In the small, working-class town of Pueblo, Colorado, on the south side of Elm Street, in a crumbling two-bedroom house with a leaking roof and a mailbox that never closed properly, lived 24-year-old Jake Miller. Thin, tired-eyed, with the dust of 100 highways on his jacket and that particular exhaustion that settles into the face of every long-haul trucker who has spent more nights sleeping in a cab than in his own bed. Jake drove a beat-up green 2004 Freightliner Columbia, a truck he had bought 5 years ago on a bank loan that still ate half of every paycheck he brought home and whose transmission groaned every time he climbed the pass out of Raton. Jake's life had exactly two purposes, and only two. His mother, Linda Miller, had been fighting heart disease for the last 8 years, surviving on a shelf full of prescription bottles and the prayers of a woman who had stopped believing in much else. His younger siblings needed to finish school. His sister Emma was a senior in high school with hopes of nursing college. His brother Caleb was a 10th grader who wanted to build bridges. $1,800 a month was never enough for rent, medicine, groceries, and school supplies. So Jake ran 5 days a week between Denver and Albuquerque hauling furniture and auto parts, and 2 more days doing short local runs across Colorado and the empty stretches of northern New Mexico. Jake's father, Robert Miller, had died 8 years ago. When Jake was 16, Robert had worked the night shift at Harlan Steel Works, the biggest steel mill in all of southern Colorado, owned by a man named Victor Harlan. Victor Harlan was the most powerful businessman in the county, cousin to a sitting state senator, a man who donated to both political parties and owned the mayor's golf membership, and the kind of man in front of whom even the Pueblo police lowered their eyes and cleared their throats. 8 years ago, on a cold October night, there had been a terrible accident at the mill. A furnace had developed a gas leak, and 12 workers died in a single silent explosion that lit up the valley for half a second and then left nothing but black smoke and ash. One of those 12 men was Robert Miller. Victor Harlan had wasted no time at all. Within 48 hours, he had called a press conference and declared the accident a case of worker negligence, and he had refused every single claim for compensation that the families filed. "Your husband got himself killed by his own carelessness," he had told Linda Miller over the phone, his voice flat and bored. "Harlan Steel owes your family nothing." When the 12 grieving families went to court together, Harlan's team of corporate lawyers tangled the case in so many motions, so many delays, so many procedural filings and continuances, that 8 long years had passed and not a single family had seen a single dollar of justice. Linda Miller had spent the first 2 years running between lawyers' offices and courthouses, selling her wedding ring, selling her mother's silver, selling the only family car, and then one winter morning, she had simply sat down at the kitchen table and stopped running. She collapsed into silence and illness, and Jake had started driving trucks that same year, because staying in Pueblo meant passing the mill gates every morning, and every morning his father's face would rise up out of those furnace stacks like smoke. Tonight, Jake had picked up a load of office furniture from a warehouse on the outskirts of Denver at 6 in the morning. All day through I-25 traffic, then west onto I-40 by 9 in the evening, and by 11 at night he was rolling past a lonely stretch of desert highway near Grants, New Mexico, the kind of stretch where the only lights for miles are a single radio tower and the reflectors on the guardrails. That was when his headlights caught a figure standing on the shoulder. An old man, white shirt, small canvas bag held carefully in one hand, and the strangest calm written across his face, as if the rain falling on him did not quite land. Jake's first thought, honest and cold, was nobody is out here this late, not anyone living, and then, against every instinct a trucker ever learns, he pulled over to the shoulder and opened the passenger door. "Sir, where are you headed this time of night? There's nothing out here for 40 miles. Get in, I'll drop you at Gallup." The old man nodded once, climbed slowly into the passenger seat, placed the canvas bag carefully in his lap, and closed the door without a word. And then began 200 miles of the strangest silence Jake Miller had ever driven through. He asked a dozen questions in the first 50 miles. Ordinary questions, trucker kindness questions. "Where do you live, sir? Do you have family waiting? Have you eaten tonight? Do you need water, coffee, a sandwich from the cooler?" And each time the old man only gave a small nod or a slow shake of his head, never speaking, never turning, his eyes fixed on the yellow lines disappearing under the hood. His hands never loosened their grip on that canvas bag, not once in 200 miles. Jake thought to himself, old folks get tired, old folks don't talk much when they're wrung out, and he turned the country station on low and kept his eyes on the road and his foot steady on the fuel. Now, at a forgotten crossroad outside Gallup, with rain hammering the cab and the wipers dragging back and forth, Jake sat alone with the dome light on, reading the folded page the old man had pressed into his hand before vanishing into the dark. The words on that page were about to tear his entire life in half. Son, my name is Raymond Carter. I lived on a small ranch outside Trinidad, Colorado. 8 years ago, my son, Daniel Carter, 26 years old, worked the furnace line at Harlan Steel Works in Pueblo. He died in a gas leak explosion along with 11 other men. The owner, Victor Harlan, refused every claim. I spent 8 years fighting that case alone. I sold the ranch, I sold the cattle, I postponed my daughter's wedding. Jake's hands began to shake. Because times Harlan Steel Works, times and times 12 workers, times and times 8 years ago, times were not some stranger's story on some stranger's page. They were the exact outline of his own life, his own father. One of those 12 men, one of those 12 bodies they had to identify from a wristwatch. He forced himself to read further. His breath had gone shallow. Over the last 5 years, I collected every piece of evidence that Victor Harlan tried to bury. I have the maintenance reports from 6 months before the blast, warning about the gas leak in Furnace 3. I have sworn statements from 2 workers who survived the explosion. I have an audio recording of Harlan's former floor manager, Greg Dalton, saying on tape, "We knew about the leak. The boss told us to ignore it. We ran the line anyway." And I have an internal email chain between Harlan and his safety director proving evidence was destroyed in the 48 hours after the accident. All of it is in this bag. My final hearing is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Colorado State Supreme Court in Denver, Courtroom 7, before Chief Justice Sarah Whitmore. I was going to deliver this evidence myself, but my heart is weak. 3 months ago, my doctor sat me down and said, "Raymond, your heart could give out on any ordinary day. No long drives, no stress." So I carried this letter with me everywhere I went, in case something happened on the road, in case I found one good man on a highway to hand it to. Son, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, or I am close to gone. My last wish is simple. Take this bag to Courtroom 7 tomorrow